Hello everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Destiny video. Today Fantasy Flight revealed a few more cards from the upcoming Boba Fett and Luke Skywalker starter decks for Legacies, which will be the next core set coming out for Star Wars Destiny. I'm going to take a look at some of these cards, going to give my thoughts on them, and so on. So first up we have Slave 1, Yellow Villain Support Vehicle, 3 resources, 2 range damage, 2 indirect, 3 indirect, 1 shield, 1 resource, blank, and has a power action. So as a power action, you can reroll one of your yellow dice. Then you may remove an opponent's die showing a value equal to the value showing on the die that you just rerolled. And each power action can only be used once per round. So essentially 3 damage sides, pretty good damage sides, I think. A 2, and a 3 for a resource for the indirect damage. So we have 2 indirect damage sides and a range damage side. Shield resources, which are nice. And I really like the power action on this. So let's say you have a die that has multiple blanks on it, like 2 blanks. If it's a yellow, you can re-roll that die. If it lands on a blank, you can remove an opponent's die showing a blank. You can also remove an opponent's die showing a special, because both specials and blanks have a value of 0. Or let's say you re-rolled into a 3. Your opponent has let's say a 3 range damage showing, and you roll let's say you reroll Slave 1 itself and you land on that 3 indirect damage, you can remove their 3 range damage or melee damage or whatever it may be. So you get a reroll out of it. So let's say you have a die that didn't roll well, you get to reroll it, and then on top of that, you get to remove an opponent's die that has a matching value. And even if your opponents have no dice that have matching values, you still got to reroll out of it as well. So that is Slave 1. I think it's pretty cool. We're going to move into our next card. We'll be right back with that. And next up, we have Wrist Rockets. Yellow Villain upgrade weapon, 3 resources, 2 range damage, 4 indirect damage for a resource, discard resource special and blank. Yellow character only. And as a special, you can deal 2 damage to a character. You may spend 1 resource to deal 2 damage to a character. So, really cool special. I like the damage side. So, you have a 2, a 4, and a 2 with the special, essentially, which you can turn into a 4 if you have a resource. So, deal 2 damage to a character, then you spend the resource to deal 2 more damage. And it just says to a character, so I don't believe it has to be the same character. So, you can do 2 damage with the rocket to one of their characters, pay a resource, and again, do that 2 damage to the same character, or pay that resource and do 2 damage to a different character. I think this is going to be really cool. I'm definitely looking forward to trying this card out. So essentially, 3 damage sides. I like the 4 indirect for a resource as well. So you have 3 really good sides on there. You also have discard and resources, which are always good to have as well. So really like the wrist rockets. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have the Millennium Falcon from the starter set. Yellow Hero Support Vehicle, 4 resources, 2 range damage, 3 range damage, 4 indirect damage for a resource, 2 shields, 2 resources, and a blank, and a pretty cool ability. So after you activate the support, you may activate one of your characters. So you could roll this in, and then roll in a character alongside it. Let's say you're playing Elite Chewie, Elite Han from the starter set. You can roll in the Falcon and then roll in Chewie or Han. Really cool thing with this vehicle, though, is with partnership. So you play partnership, which lets you activate a support and a character. So you roll those out. You roll out the Millennium Falcon and one of your characters. You then use the after effect on the Falcon, on this Falcon, to roll in your other character. So let's say play partnership, roll in the Falcon with Han, then roll in Chewbacca with the after effect on this Millennium Falcon, and then pay a resource for partnership to take an additional action. If you have it just roll all damage, you then can resolve, I imagine, quite a bit of damage between the Falcon's range damage, Han's range damage, and Chewbacca's range damage as well. So I really like the Millennium Falcon. I like that it has really good sides. It's 1 resource less than the original Millennium Falcon. I don't believe the original Millennium Falcon had any blanks. This has a single blank, but still some good sides. So you have 3 damage sides, and then you have a 2 shield and a 2 resource side as well. And I'm really looking forward to trying this out with partnership, which I think will just let you roll this in, roll a character in, roll another character in, which is going to be pretty cool. So that's the Millennium Falcon. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Force Focus, neutral blue, upgrade ability from the starter. 2 resources, 1 shield, 1 resource, 2 specials, and a blank. And to play it, you have to spot a blue character. And the special is turn one of your dice to any side. You then reveal a blue card from your hand, turn an opponent's die to any side. Or, yeah, so after you do that, it's nice that you can basically focus one of your dice and blank out one of your opponents. And I like that you have the special on there twice. One thing I'm not thrilled about is having to reveal a blue card, because if you are playing against the 2-player starter set version of Kylo, you are going to be revealing stuff that they can then see, and then they'll know that you have 4 blue cards in your hand, possibly. So um, that is a risk to running this, is that Kylo will be able to see it and deal damage to a character when he chooses that blue card, or when you reveal a blue. So that's one thing to look out for with Force Focus. Aside from that, I like that it has the 2 resource sides and the 2 special sides, and the special essentially lets you use the Force. On top of that, you can reveal a blue card and also flip one of your opponent's dies as well. So that is Force Focus. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have the Heirloom Lightsaber, neutral blue card from the starter set. I'm not sure. I believe this is going to be in the Luke Skywalker deck, but I love that it's another neutral lightsaber. So 3 resources, one melee damage, 2 melee damage, 3 melee damage, resource or shield resource, and then also this upgrade has the redeploy keyword while it's on a blue character. So playing straight blue, put it on a blue character, it can redeploy to another blue character, or just another character, but as long as it's on a blue character, it gets redeploy. I like the damage sides on that. I like that none of them are resource costed or modified. So you have a 1, a 2, and a 3. You also get your shield and resource, and possibly redeploy if you play it on a blue character. So I really like I really like this card, potentially with something like lightsaber training, where you can focus your blue weapons into whatever sides you want, or Force Strike, where you can focus that and then resolve it, and you can put it on that 3, and there's no modifier, and none of the sides have resource costs either. So I think that's pretty cool. So that is the Heirloom Lightsaber. We're gonna move into our next card. And next up, we have Impulsive. I believe this is from Legacies, because it has the blue common symbol. Looks like all the starter stuff has the just gray card numbering. But Hero Yellow event, 0 resources, has Ambush, so you get an additional action after you play it. Resolve one of your dice. So you can resolve one of your dice and then take another action. I really like this with Focus. So you can play Impulsive, resolve a die with Focus, focus something, and then resolve what you just focused, because now you have Ambush from Impulsive. I think that's really cool. Also, so like let's say you resolve something and then roll in another character. So let's say I roll in a character, I have a damage side showing, I play Impulsive, I resolve that side, and then activate my other character and roll that character. But I really do like it with something like Focus, where you can focus something, focus something, and then resolve what you just focused because you have Ambush now. So that is Impulsive. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Maz's Vault. 0 cost, support location, hero. Each player gains 1 additional resource during the upkeep phase. So you play this for 0, and each upkeep, every player is going to get 1 additional resource. So every player is going to get, essentially, instead of getting 2 resources during the upkeep, will get 3 resources during the upkeep. I think this is actually balanced really well, because if it was just only gave you additional resources, that would be, I think, probably pretty broken. So play this, you get an additional resource, but also your opponent, or opponents if you're playing a multiplayer game, will also get an additional resource. Could be risky, because you could be giving them resources to play something like a Rise Again if you're playing against blue, or like a really expensive upgrade, like a 4-cost upgrade or something like that. But on the other hand, you're going to be getting an extra resource as well, so you can then play your bigger support cards or your bigger costed upgrades and so on. So Maz's Vault, I really like the fact that it hits everybody. Everybody gets an additional resource, and maybe this doesn't really speed the game up, but it makes it so some of those upgrades and supports that people just can't afford to get out unless you're running a deck designed to just make massive amounts of resources and maybe potentially get. So now you're going to be starting each round after the first round with 3 resources for each player. I think that's pretty cool. So we're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Crash Landing, neutral red event. 0 resources. Remove a die showing damage, either ranged, melee, or indirect, then deal indirect damage to yourself equal to the value on that die. So, pretty cool dice mitigation and like removal, because you're removing a die, dealing damage to yourself, and getting rid of that die in the process, which I think is pretty cool. So you're going to. I also like the fact that this is neutral. So let's say you're playing Dr. Aphra and a red character, you can remove this die and then deal indirect damage to yourself. You still get to spread the damage too. So you can like let's say it's a 3 melee damage die. You remove that die, deal 3 indirect damage. Let's say you do 1 to Dr. Aphra, 2 to your other character. Dr. Aphra has then taken indirect damage, and now you get to trigger her ability to draw a card. So and in her case, you're moving a die, dealing damage to her, and getting to draw a card. I like that it's neutral, and I like that it now also, they're starting to include that indirect damage symbol on these cards that will remove damage dice. So before it was either just remove a die that was showing range or melee, and now with this indirect damage on the card, you can remove range, melee, or indirect. So that is Crash Landing. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Locked and Loaded. 1 resource, neutral red event. Spot a red character turn up to 2 of your dice aside showing indirect damage. So 1 resource, you get to flip 2 dice to indirect. I really like this, especially with something like, let's say, Tactical Mastery, where you play Tactical Mastery for 1, pay a resource, flip your dice to indirect damage, and then resolve that indirect damage. I like that you can basically also use swiftness with this to give this ambush, so then you can focus those dice and do a massive amount of indirect damage on them as well. So Locked and Loaded, I think, is a really cool card, especially with indirect. And let's say you're playing against just like a Palp deck, and they only have 1 character. They only have Palpatine, and you play this, and you focus into, let's say, like 6 indirect damage. That's 6 damage just directly to Palpatine. Or if they only have 1 character left, you can do that as well. So that is Locked and Loaded. I really like that. I like this card, especially if you have a way to, like if your opponents have claimed, or if you can somehow give an ambush. Let's say you have 2 dice that are blank, and your opponent claims, and then you pay this 1 resource to flip those dice, and then deal a big amount of the indirect damage to your opponent. That's pretty interesting. So we're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have the Arid Wasteland on Geonosis, and claim, pretty simple, force an opponent to lose 1 resource. So you claim it, they lose a resource. Not much to be said about that, but let's say your opponent is holding on to a resource to maybe potentially play a 3-cost upgrade at the beginning of their next round. So they get 2 during the upkeep phase, and they're holding on to 1 to save to do that. Claim the battlefield, get rid of that 1 resource that they were saving, and now they won't be able to play that upgrade unless they do something like overwrite something else or something like that. Again, like I said, not much to say about the battlefield. I think it's got a pretty cool effect because you can just cause them to lose a resource. But that is the Arid Wasteland. We're going to move into our next card. And the final card revealed today was the Outer Rim Outpost on Nalhutta. Claim, gain 1 resource, and draw a card. So you get, essentially, it's like a moisture farm with the additional effect of also drawing a card. So you get your resource, you get to draw a card. I think that's a pretty cool battlefield. A really good effect as well, because you're getting a resource to spend on something else later, and then you're also getting to draw a card. And if it ends up not being a card that you want before you draw before the next phase, you can just discard that card to draw an additional card. So it also lets you kind of get through your deck a little bit faster. Like if you draw a card, let's say you have a blue character and a red character, and let's say your blue character had been defeated, and you have a card that says spot blue. Let's say you draw a card with this effect of this battlefield that says spot a blue character. You draw that, and then before, when it goes to the draw card phase of the upkeep phase for the next round, you can just discard that to draw an additional card. So the Outer Rim Outpost, I'm really looking forward to trying this location out. I think it looks pretty interesting because, like I said, it's like a moisture farm, but you also get to draw a card on top of that. So that is the Outer Rim Outpost. That is the final card for today. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll be back next time. I want to thank you again for watching, and take care.